Welcome back to the outlet.
Welcome to the show. Our guest today, his name is Sohum. Welcome, Sohum.
Thank you so much for having me, Johnny. It's an honor to be here.
Anytime, my friend. So let's talk about your current situation and businesses that you're doing.
Sure, yeah. So I'm originally from Denver. I moved out here about 3 years ago with my work in the cannabis industry. I've been in the industry close to 10 years now. The last company I worked for, we moved our headquarters out to California. Prior to that, I founded a company called the Cannabis Commodities Exchange in Denver, where we helped retail stores connect with manufacturers and cultivators of licensed product. Okay. Through my work with CCX, I also ended up becoming one of the freelance writers and cannabis critics for the Denver Post and their special cannabis covering vertical called the Cannabist. And through that, I met my friend Jake Brown and Sam Sant, who together we started one of the first quantitatively graded cultivation competitions in the cannabis industry. It's called the Grow Off. My project after that was some investor relations consulting that I was doing with a company called MassRoots. And after a couple months of that, I ended up going full-time with MassRoots as their director of investor relations, where I worked for about 3 years. And it was during that time that we decided to move the MassRoots headquarters to California. So that's how I ended up down here in sunny Long Beach.
Amazing. How long have you been in Long Beach? Were you always in Long Beach?
Well, when I first moved out here, we moved our company to Hollywood Hills. So we had, a house where we could all kind of work out of and live together. And of course, as we started to move on and focus on other projects, we all kind of went our separate ways. I still live with the CEO and founder of MassRoots here in Long Beach. We just moved to Long Beach because honestly, I like the vibe down here a little bit more.
Such a cool vibe, right, man?
We got a beautiful beach here. We got beautiful sunsets. The people here are super friendly and awesome. So, I'm really enjoying Long Beach. I moved here a little more than a year ago, and I don't see myself leaving anytime soon.
So what's the current project as of right now that you're on?
Sure. So I have a new consulting project that I'm working on with my friend and business partner, Saman. Mm-hmm. He's based out of the Central California area in Santa Barbara.
Okay.
So we're doing operational consulting on manufacturing, cultivation, dispensaries. We're helping businesses get licenses in new states that have just gone legal. So, for example, last month we saw Arizona and New Jersey and a couple other states pass ballot initiatives that legalize adult use recreational cannabis. So new people in that state or existing medical businesses might be interested in applying for those recreational licenses. So we can come in, we help them find a property, do any type of build out that they need to, fill out the application with their state and local regulators, get them through their inspections and getting their occupancy. And then we help them operationally as well. Once they're up and running, we help them find product or sell product or whatever it is that they need to have done.
What about infusing THC with foods?
Absolutely. So my partner, Saman, is one of the premier extraction and manufacturing just geniuses really in the state of California. We can do product formulation as well. So one thing we'll do when we talk to a client, we'll kind of see what products they are already manufacturing or selling, and then we'll do an assessment of where they want to be in 6 months or 12 months, and then we can help them formulate different types of products to fit for their customer base.
So do you think there's a lot of benefits with this?
With cannabis, I absolutely do, and I think the fact that we have widespread acceptance of medical cannabis, not just here in the United States, but around the world as well. We saw a recent vote from the World Health Organization on their recommendation that the United Nations Council on Drug Policy removed cannabis from their highest schedule, as it had been due to American policy for a long time. And again, there is ample evidence, clinical trials and such, that comes from overseas, places like Israel and Europe, to show that there are absolutely medical benefits. I think a lot of people's confusion comes with how traditional medicine or cannabis, like plant medicine, works versus Western medicine and pharmaceutical medicine, right? If you think about pills, they're generally meant to treat one type of ailment, and they target that, and a lot of them have very negative side effects, and then you get prescribed another drug that's meant just to treat the side effects of the first medication, and so on and so forth.
Yes.
Cannabis is a very different approach to health, right? Your endocannabinoid system is a part of your brain that every human has. We all have our own endocannabinoid system.
Where is that located?
It's, I'm not a doctor, so I couldn't tell you physically in your brain where it's located, but it's a part of your neurological system that is in charge of maintaining homeostasis in your body.
Oh, okay.
So homeostasis is just like the optimum operating level, right? No matter
Gotcha.
what. Like if you know, for example, if you're exercising, your body starts to heat up, right?
Yes.
In order to maintain homeostasis, your body perspires. You sweat to cool down a little bit. So that's one example of how your body adjusts to a situation to maintain homeostasis. So your endocannabinoid system is meant to take in cannabinoids, and that could be outside cannabinoids, like what we consume with cannabis, or endocannabinoid, meaning self-producing cannabinoid. Our bodies actually produce cannabinoids, different types of cannabinoids that are on a daily basis, and that's why we have that system in our brain. So our bodies are really meant to ingest this cannabis, and it takes that cannabis and uses it in the way that's most effective for your body. That's why different products can affect people differently, because we all have a different body, and we have different ailments, we have different strengths. What cannabis does for me, you might not need that same benefit, so that's why it has so much efficacy in treating such a wide array of ailments.
Yeah, like when I have a stomach ache, usually if I take like a small edible or something, I feel great right after,
Yeah, absolutely.
Or like especially migraines.
migraine.
Oh man, migraines.
And see, there's a reason that your body knows when you ingest it, whether you're having a stomach ache or a digestive issue, or whether you have cancer that you're treating, or whether you have a migraine, and your body knows how to use that cannabinoid most effectively. And obviously, the more mindful you are as a consumer, knowing what products you're taking and what potential effects they have, your body, you can train your body more and more to use cannabis effectively and make sure that it's really complementary to your lifestyle. Or, you can just use it as a recreational substance to have fun, and that's the beauty of passing these laws, that we leave it up to the responsible and consenting adult to make that decision on how to use cannabis.
Yeah. So how many states actually are legal right now? Do you know off the top of your head, or?
I used to know this number always, but with the last few, I want to say that it's around 13 or 14. I could start listing them off. So we have Alaska, Washington, Oregon, California, Arizona, Nevada, Colorado, Maine, Massachusetts,
New York and Jersey, or no?
Jersey, no
Okay.
New York, and I'll explain why in a second.
Okay.
New Jersey, Washington, D.C. I think that's all of them that are recreational right now.
Okay.
I think that's all of them that are recreational right now. New York is an interesting one, because even though it is a more liberal and progressive place,
Yeah.
the way that their state constitution is structured, they don't allow citizens to collect signatures and put an initiative on the ballot the way that a legalization has happened in almost every other state. And I just remembered Vermont is also recreational, but they did not do it through a ballot initiative, which is why they're unique. They did it through a legislative process. Their state regulators passed it on their own. But in New York, obviously you have a lot of corporate interests that have ties to their state assembly. And because it's a general assembly state, the only way that they can introduce legislation like that is for the assembly members to introduce a bill. So unfortunately, until those corporate interests change their mind and allow those politicians to vote in that way, or until the people of New York decide that they no longer want politicians that are paid off by corporations, I think it's going to be pretty hard to see that legalization come to New York. But lucky for New Yorkers, they've decriminalized in the city, and they've made it a low priority of enforcement for the New York Police Department, and you're surrounded by states that have recreational marijuana. So I'm not saying that you should take marijuana over state lines, but you probably can get away with it if you want to.
What about Colorado? Growing up over there, I remember
Colorado.
that was back in the 90s. I remember people like, oh yeah, Colorado has the best bud.
Yeah, I mean, and it's interesting. Everywhere that has a history of cannabis use and cultivation has the best bud. If you ask the people that are from there,
Oregon.
people in Washington say Washington east of the Cascade Mountains has the best bud.
Yeah.
People from Oregon say they have the best bud. People in Northern California say they have the best bud, and it's all sun grown. People in Colorado say we have that nice high altitude weed. The fact is that cannabis has grown in a plethora of different environments, right? Cannabis grows naturally in some environments, and we call those landrace strains. So Durban poison is a type of landrace strain that was found in Durban, South Africa.
Okay.
And then we have, Hindu Kush is a landrace strain that was found in the Hindu Kush mountains in Afghanistan. So a lot of the genetics that we smoke now are people that went and found all these naturally occurring landrace genetics and crossbreeding them together, and that's happened over and over and over, and so to the point where we have thousands of different strains now. They all originally came from these handful like natural strains that grew in different parts of the planet.
And it was just manipulated into
Exactly.
what it is
So it's
now.
been crossbred over and over. But where I'm getting at with that is that every place that I just mentioned, that whether it's Washington or Oregon or Northern California or Colorado, they each have their own unique environment. And chances are there is a type of cannabis that grows really well in that environment, and there's a bunch of types of weed that do not grow well in that environment. And this is one of the issues with our current legal framework, right? We don't allow, because it's federally illegal and it's still a Schedule I drug, the transaction of cannabis over state lines is not allowed, right? So a store in Colorado is not allowed to import, quote unquote, from Humboldt County some of California's fine sun-grown cannabis.
Yeah.
And likewise, we can't go from Washington to Oregon. So the result of that is people are forced, because people know all these different strains, consumers do, right? People try to grow everything in every different environment. So I think obviously as we get federal legalization, that issue will start to resolve itself once you can, send the best weed from Colorado to California and vice versa.
Quick question.
Yeah.
How does the scent come about? Like if you say, here, I got this vanilla ice cream, cake.
So the scent is actually it goes beyond the scent.
Is it chemicals? Or?
Yeah. So what causes the scent is in the trichome, which is the kind of mushroom shaped crystals that you see on a mature, flowered, like well cultivated female plant. That's where the THC is, right? That's where the oils are held.
Yeah.
One of the other types of compounds that is also held in the trichome, other than cannabinoids, are called terpenes.
Okay.
Terpenes make up the smell, and terpenes exist through all of nature. They exist in plants, in vegetables, in all sorts of stuff, right? So myrcene is a type of more sedative, relaxing terpene that you will find in a lot of varieties of cannabis, but it also comes from black pepper.
Okay.
Right. So limonene is the more citrusy one that you'll smell in what we call sativa strains, or more uplifting cerebral strains. And you'll find that in lots of different citrus, right? Lemons and limes and stuff like that. Linalool or linalool, depending on how you pronounce it, is the same smell that makes up what you recognize when you smell lavender or lavender oil.
Gotcha.
And they have similar effects. Obviously, when you're talking about combusting them and inhaling them, they might not have the exact same effect, but they're the same chemical compounds. And they do have, so there's a reason that when you go into a store, right, they might have something that they labeled as an indica and another variety they labeled as a sativa, and they both have 20% THC, right? So what makes the difference between one strain and the other? Why is one considered an indica or something that's going to be more relaxing, and the other considered a sativa is going to be more uplifting and energetic? And the answer is the terpenes. Those terpenes are called CB1 and CB2 agonists. So CB1 and CB2 are the types of receptors on your endocannabinoid system where cannabinoids are binding to. Terpenes bind to those same receptors, and they positively affect the high. So that's why two different strains have different feelings, even if they have the same cannabinoid profile, the same amount of THC in the plant.
Gotcha.
So, and the way that we perceive terpenes is through smell and taste. So when you smell something, you can actually, if you know a lot about cannabis and your experience as a smoker, you will be able to associate the smell of a certain variety with an effect, right? Like when I smell a lemon strain or a piney strain like a Durban poison, I know that it's going to be good in the morning, or when I'm doing some type of creative activity or work or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah. And so it's just about refining your palate as a cannabis consumer, if that's something that you want to do.
Wow, that's amazing. It's like wine tasting.
Exactly. It's very, very similar to wine tasting. And obviously, as it's a little premature right now as a regulated industry, but I 100% believe that in the next 10 to 20 years, we will start to see certifications similar to sommelier certifications that they have in wine.
Wow, man. Mind blown. Crazy. Are you also into mushrooms?
I am a huge supporter of the decriminalization and use, therapeutic or even, recreational use of all different types of psychedelic substances. I think that everybody in their life should at least try it once, because it opens up a way of thinking and a way of perceiving the universe that you just cannot understand until you've ever done it. And I really do think that those substances have been prohibited because the powers that be know the power of enlightenment that they have, and that people will become more independent and free thinking. And this is what a lot of the hippies were about in the 60s, right? And that's why a lot of these substances, whether it's psilocybin mushrooms or LSD or peyote or ayahuasca or any other DMT based chemicals, are illegal because they provide enlightenment that is a threat to maintaining control and over a population. So to answer your question, I think it's great that we see places like the city and county of Denver, the city of Oakland.
I just heard yesterday, Oregon. Oakland, they just opened up.
So Denver was the very first one that decriminalized mushrooms, psilocybin. Shortly after that was done by a vote of the people about a little more than a year ago.
Yeah.
Oakland came shortly after that, and they did it by a city council vote, actually. And they decriminalized all entheogenic substances, meaning any plant-based psychedelic.
Okay. Do they turn it into an oil, or do they just give it straight mushroom?
So currently there's no regulations on it, right? They basically just said that if you're an adult and you're over the age of 21, you are allowed to be in possession of up to an ounce of psilocybin mushrooms in your house. You can consume them, you can do whatever. They have not, and I don't think they will in the near future, created a commercial system of access and cultivation the way that we have marijuana, right? Yeah. They haven't licensed anyone to cultivate mushrooms for commercial gain. They haven't licensed anyone to open a mushroom dispensary. Although I have heard from a couple friends that there is one co-op mushroom dispensary in Oakland now.
I see. And for the people that don't know how to take mushrooms, what's the best way to take mushrooms? I know there's chocolates.
Chocolates are interesting. It's very hard to homogenize if you're making chocolates at scale. It's hard to homogenize the testing and the potency of the chocolate, right? And what I mean by that is when you buy a chocolate bar, if somebody tells you it has 100 milligrams of psilocybin in it, you want to ensure that it's distributed properly, right? So that each square has 10 milligrams or whatever, however it's broken down, but it's evenly distributed.
Gotcha.
And that's very hard to do because of the way that the mushrooms and the chocolate interact. So I would say the most direct way to do it is just to eat mushrooms. And I know obviously that doesn't necessarily taste good. And it can be, for people that have a sensitive digestive system. Mm-hmm. I don't usually vomit from it, but I definitely do feel nauseated a little bit when I eat straight mushrooms. So one thing that I prefer to that, it's called lemon teching. So you grind up the dose of mushrooms that you would like to take just with a coffee grinder, and then you put it into a shot glass and cover it, basically just fill enough fresh lemon juice to cover the mushrooms in there. And I've heard of people adding cayenne and some other stuff that can kind of elevate or
it's like a turmeric
accelerate the high a little bit. Oh. But essentially what happens is the citric acid in the lemon juice has a similar pH to what's in your stomach, right? Your stomach acid. So the citric acid starts to break down the mushrooms. So you let it sit for 15 minutes and basically the citric acid pre-digests the mushrooms for you. So it hits you faster and it's a lot cleaner. And when you drink it too, it's covered in lemon juice, so it doesn't taste bad either.
Wow. That's awesome, dude. So let's talk about this new show that you're coming out with. Is it what's the name of it? Durban?
It's called Durban's World.
Durban's World. Okay,
so
cool.
That was the last of my current projects that I was getting to. We got sidetracked nerding out on psychedelics and on cannabis, which I'm always happy to do. So no problem. But it's a show that my friend Ben, and his handle is DJ Beneficial. So you can find him on Instagram. He's a really talented illustrator, animator, music producer, DJ. So we met a couple years ago, and after hearing my voice, he was asked me, have you ever done a cartoon? Have you ever thought about doing that? And I had not, but I was like, I'm interested. What do you have in mind? And, just through brainstorming at a Super Bowl party at my house in the hills, we came up with this concept about a snake who works in the cannabis industry. So the snake is the main character. His name's Durban Stone.
Is it like a cobra snake?
It's a bull snake.
Oh, okay.
And the reason he's a bull snake is that bull snakes have a similar pattern to rattlesnakes, diamondback rattlesnakes.
Okay.
But they're non-venomous. They're constrictors, but they're actually beneficial predators. And where I grew up in Colorado, we had a lot of bull snakes, and they killed rattlesnakes, and they eat rabbits and stuff like that are bad for your lawn and stuff. So bull snakes are actually really a good predator, but because of the way they look like a rattlesnake. So a lot of the time when people encounter them, they kill them thinking that it's a rattlesnake. And that's something that we really wanted to play on with Durban's World, whether it's the way that people perceive stoners or cannabis consumers, and how that's often not accurate. Or whether it's, we really would like to talk about some of the more prevalent race-related issues that our society is confronting right now. And I think doing that in a way that we're using anthropomorphized animals as opposed to what the real, what's really happening, I think we can make it a little bit more relatable and friendly.
100%. Totally
Yeah,
agree
so
with that.
Durban owns a cannabis cultivation facility with his friend Andy, who's a monkey. And together they run Cinquate Cannabis. That's the name of their company. And their friend Gigi runs a chain of stores.
And what type of animal is she, Gigi?
She's a husky.
Okay.
So this is their little crew, and then their fourth friend is the bartender that works at the Red Room, which is the name of the bar that they go to in Hollywood. It's kind of a divey punk bar, but they hang out after work. And her name is Laguna, and she's a kangaroo. So she's super cool and friendly, but if you act a fool at her bar, she'll bust out her golden gloves and she'll knock your fucking ass out.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, and then they also, Andy and Durban, Andy is a drummer, Durban is the singer, and they have a hammerhead shark, Kyle Lucky is the bassist, and they have a punk band called Bob and the Muellers, which of course is a cheeky reference to the head of the special counsel investigation into Donald Trump a few years ago.
So, how many episodes do you have right now?
So we haven't actually produced any episodes. We produced about 9 full minutes of content with a few voice actors that were really gracious and were willing to contribute their time. Mm-hmm. There's Nisa Ward, Scott Borden, DJ Az's, Benji, Django, and provide their contact and social media information at the end of the episode. But basically, we just started. I wrote about 15 minutes of script, and we produced about 9 minutes of it just to see how it would look, and it came out really well. So we've now kind of distilled that down into a sizzle of about 3 minutes. And we're getting ready to try and get it in front of some studios, like maybe like a Netflix or an HBO or a Hulu. Honestly, at this point, I'm pretty agnostic to who picks it up, but I think it's a really solid concept. And we have a synopsis for a full first season of 10 episodes, along with kind of a concept for what would happen in season 2, 3, 4, and 5. So,
is cannabis infused with this cartoon?
Absolutely. A lot of this is about showing the world. Yes, some of the funny intricacies of working behind the scenes in the cannabis industry, but also I think people have a lot of people have the wrong perception of people that work in the cannabis industry. Like, yes, a lot of us are heavy consumers and advocates of the plant and ambassadors of the plant and normalizing its consumption in society, but at the end of the day, we also are people that are just running highly regulated businesses and highly taxed businesses. So
entrepreneurs,
exactly,
geniuses.
And people and the fact is the amount of regulatory hoops that we have to jump through. You have to be passionate about the plant, but you cannot be an idiot, right? You have to be able to navigate these things, and the people that can't cut it, unfortunately, get weeded out.
Yeah.
No pun intended. And on that note, I'm going to spark up this blunt.
Yeah, do what you got to do, my friend. So I remember my first time I came out here, I actually landed in Oakland, and I got contact high because literally the airport, you can just smell the bud. And right when I was going into the taxi, it was just smoke everywhere. And like back in New York and Jersey, if you have like a little joint or even like a crumb on the floor, you're going to jail.
Yeah.
Like
thankfully that's starting to change. No longer in New Jersey. And like I said, I think the city of New York at least has decriminalized or made it a low priority for law enforcement.
What about all those people that are in jail?
That's a very valid question. And I think that's an area in which the cannabis industry as stakeholders, we have a lot to improve upon. It's not right at all that by some stroke of luck, or in many cases because of the color of some people's skin, that they escaped criminal prosecution, and there's still millions of black and brown, primarily men, that are locked up on nonviolent drug offenses. So I think that's something that as a society we need to address. It's something that when we pass a new legalization initiative in a state, I think that those initiatives should include some type of language that speaks about mass release of people that are incarcerated for nonviolent drug offenses and finds a way to potentially help them benefit and profit off of the new, now legalized and commercialized cannabis plant, and not so it's not just all Wall Street investors and other people that quite frankly, probably voted against legalization, but now that it's legal are open to making a buck off of it. And you know what? I'm not going to judge anyone's profit interest. Well, I am, but I can't stop that. But I do think that we should be very mindful of the people that came before us and the sacrifices that were made to get us to where we are today.
Yeah, I mean, there's stories with people that got locked up back in the 70s with an ounce of bud, and they're like just getting out.
Yeah, I mean, there's people that are serving life sentences for things like a few joints because they were in a state somewhere in the Midwest or the South
back in like the 60s
in
and
the
50s.
60s or the 70s, and they were probably a black or a brown person in a place where the law enforcement were not terribly friendly. And let's be real, it's not like much has changed in that regard.
Yeah.
Law enforcement still has a widespread issue with misdirection of resources and excessive enforcement against people of color.
Wow. Yeah, man, that's it's been a crazy issue lately with all that. Would there be anything else that you would like to talk about?
No, I mean, well, Durban's World is really like my most exciting project right now. And, I've spoken with you a little bit about, we'd love to have your voice on there. You have a really distinct voice.
What would I play if I was on your show? I was thinking about Smokey the Bear.
I know we talked about that. We'll have to look into the trademarks on being actually Smokey the Bear, but
you
do
could
like
just change
the idea.
a hat, you can put like a fire hat.
I like the idea of a big bear that's like the security guard at their warehouse or at the store or something like that. And it's perfect because like you're really a friendly guy, even though you're big as fuck and you look like you could rip somebody apart, but you're like a really like friendly and kind person. You have a really kind heart, and I think that's a great personality that we could bring into the show. So at this point we're open to anybody that wants to get involved. If people have voice acting experience, comedic writing experience, that's the type of stuff that we need.
How can they contact you? Do you have like platform? Give them your
Absolutely.
platform.
So,
for sure.
Durban's World at Durban's World is our Instagram and Twitter handle. So follow us there. And if you DM on either of those, I'll be happy to get back to you.
Awesome. So guys, if you guys want to do voiceovers, hit up Sohum.
Yeah. And my personal Twitter is at Sohum J Shah. My personal Instagram is Soho303. Interact with me. Let's chop it up.
Dude, I can't wait to see this come out. And thank you so much for being on the show, my friend.
Dude, thank you so much for having me. It was really a pleasure to be here.
Anytime.
Thank you for listening to The Outlet.